Hey guys, it's Darcy12 or One Set Malicious and another episode of Dueling like a General. Alright, this time we're going to be going through some basic gameplay tips to playing Dark World. First of all, let me explain how exactly do Dark World monsters activate. Let's go over that once again. There's a difference between cost and effect. A cost is something you have to do before the card activates. For example, Lightning Vortex. Lightning Vortex requires you to discard one card from your hand in order to destroy all face-up monsters on the field when you activate Lightning Vortex. Now, discarding one card from your hand doesn't activate Dark World monsters because it was a cost. It was not part of the effect of the card. So if you use Lightning Vortex and you discard gold, it will stay in the graveyard. Yep, so sad. So yeah. Dark World decks actually, now the cards nowadays, and the Dark World structure deck actually tells you now when exactly does our card effect begin and when it's not. So cards nowadays have well, we say, I don't know how to say, period in a coma. Yeah, a period and a coma sign. Yeah, a period in the top and a coma on the bottom. And everything after that sign is part of the card effect. Everything before that sign is a cost. Now, some of the older cards don't have that, so you have to wash out. But if, in the case of the older cards, if it says 2, like if it says the word 2, like T-O, then that means that you have to discard 2, do this. So basically it's a cost. Now if it says discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards was not made so you can just draw 2 cards. It was part of the effect because the card says discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards. In that case, Dark World monsters activate. So discard 2 cards, discard gold and something else, and the gold summons. Alright, now that we covered that, how exactly, how does the Dark World deck play in general? Well, there's like, it's divided in stages. The first thing is the setup. Like every other deck, you gotta set up your place. In the case of Dark World, you really want to set up your graveyard and your hand. Your graveyard, you set up your graveyard by putting a Fiend monster and Grapha in your graveyard as soon as possible. Let me look for Grapha here. Yeah, I can't find your Grapha. Where is he? Alright. You put Grapha and any Fiend monster. Any Fiend monster, really, like anything in the graveyard. Now, why Grapha? Because you're going to be summoning him from the graveyard with your Dark World monsters. And why a Fiend monster? Why any Fiend monster aside from Grapha? Because you're going to be needing that Fiend monster so you can activate this. When you have this, and your hand with Fiend monsters, you're basically playing a Dark World deck. So how does it go? Alright. First, you have the Fiend monster in the graveyard. Let's say, let's take this for example, Brawn. Let's say your Brawn got killed in a battle, and it's in the graveyard. Now, you want to activate Gates of Dark World from your hand, and you're going to activate your Gates of Dark World's effect. So, which means that you have to banish this as a cost, and then discard any Dark World monster, in this case Grapha, so you can draw 1 card. Then, as soon as you have Grapha on the field, whether it was through Gates or it was through Foolish Burial, which we have it right here, then you're set. From then on, it's doing stuff like this. You play a Dark World monster, you send it back to the hand, and you summon Grapha. Or you keep discarding Dark Worlds. You use stuff like Dark World Dealings to discard things like Brow or Snow to the graveyard to keep looking for more cards In the case of Brawl, you draw more cards. In the case of Snow, you look for more Grappas, you can look for more Gates, you can look for more Dark World Dealings, you can look for another Snow, you can look for more Brawls, anything you need that it's Dark World. And then you keep feeding your graveyard, with Fiend monsters, and you keep banishing them with Gates to draw even more cards. Now, that's basically how Dark World plays. It's actually very simple. Now, the thing is, one of the things you need to watch out for is your discard outlets. The thing is that this deck depends a lot on discard outlets, and you really need to have multiple options available. You cannot just depend on Gates. You cannot just depend on Dark World Dealings. You cannot just depend on card destruction, and you cannot just depend on drag down to the grave. You have to have multiple options to discard your Dark World monsters to the graveyard. So let's say a good opening hand will be Gates, Dark World Dealings, several Dark World monsters, and maybe another trap card or something. Because what happens, you discard your first Fiend monsters to the graveyard with Dark World Dealings, and then you get the engine going with Gates by banishing that Fiend monster. Now, if you only had Gates on the field, then you will have to wait till one of your Dark World monsters got destroyed by somehow, by battle or by being discarded, so you can then activate Gates and get the engine going. So that's what I mean when this deck depends on discard outlets. It really is very dependent on that. So if you really want to get the turn going really fast, you have to play as many discard outlets as possible. If you want to play a little more slower, then you can depend on getting your Dark World monsters destroyed or getting stuff like Tour Guide to the graveyard by doing Exceeds or Doom Caliber Knight. Now, what are things that how is it good to capitalize on the second effects of the Dark World monsters? For example, using Ceruli to activate both effects of Dark World monsters? No. It's really cool to use your Dark World deck to its most powerful potential, but the fact is that the first effects of every Dark World monster that gets discarded are already enough. The second effects are really just overkill. I mean, Grappa is already amazing on its own by being able to be brought back from the graveyard by just bouncing a Dark World monster to your hand. His second effect of looking at a card in their opponent's hand and special summoning it to the field, that's just extra fluff. That's right there just because. Honestly, when you're playing Grappa, the only thing you should care about is his effect of destroying more cards on the field and then summoning him from the graveyard. That's it. But in the case that you really want to capitalize on using Dark World's second effects, then I really suggest you use this thing, Ceruli, and use cards like Dark Deal. But aside from that, you can safely keep away from activating the second effects of Dark World monsters. It's really not that necessary. Alright, well, I think that basically covers some basic things about Dark World. I think you already have a basic idea of how a Dark World deck runs. I'm going to be posting another video later on in advanced tips, like some neat tricks you can do while playing with your Dark Worlds, so you can gain advantage and all that stuff. But for now, I hope this video covered the most basic thing about Dark World, and you have an idea of how your deck is supposed to be building. I'm also going to make another video about that on basic deck building, and I'm actually going to be going across various Dark World builds, not just one. I'm going to be talking about Ceruli builds, I'm going to be talking about Skill Drain builds, I'm going to be talking about Tour Guide builds, I'm going to be talking about my build, which is a Doom Caliber build. So yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting. But for now, I hope this video has helped you a lot in the basics of Dark World, and see you in the next episode of Dueling Like a General.